Hi, and welcome to this YouTube live event for America Saves Week, the America Saves Twitter chat and YouTube live panel discussion on the topic of the many benefits of saving money. I'm Bob Bertsch from North Dakota State University. So glad to have you along today. I hope that you'll join in our conversation on Twitter using hashtag eXASchat as you watch this live panel discussion featuring Dr. Barb O'Neill from Rutgers University. Dr. O'Neill will be handling our Twitter traffic as we try and tie in the Twitter discussion here with this YouTube live event. Also joining us, Dr. Laura Hendrix of the University of Arkansas, Lindsay Ferguson from America Saves program. Dr. Bryce Jorgensen is here from New Mexico State University, and Dr. Erica Tobe from Michigan State University, and also Dr. Lauren Jones from Ohio State University. So thanks, panelists, for joining us. We got a lot of great questions as we talk about getting ready to save and start saving for America Saves Week. And we'll start with just talking about why savings is important. And so, Erica, I know as we were getting ready, I said I wasn't going to pick on you very much, but this is not a perfect opportunity to surprise you and pick on you first. So let's talk about some of the benefits of saving and why savings is important.
Yeah, I think anytime that you can start to save money, you can just become so much more empowered in your life. And so and thinking about if you want to develop goals or if you want to have any big purchases down the road, it really puts you in that forefront that you can actually start to think about how you might actually achieve those particular goals. What are some of the things that you can actually do? It really empowers you to have that opportunity to always be thinking in the positive instead of thinking about what do I have to do to pay down my debt and other things like that. So it's really an empowering feature and giving people that power and that ability. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits that we typically see.
Laura, are there other benefits that you could think of for getting started saving, especially this week during America Saves Week? And maybe we'll have to follow up and go to Lindsay to talk more about America Saves Week as well.
Sure. I think savings is so critical for consumers because of really basically two things. One is it is the very best way to protect yourself in times of financial crisis. So without some kind of emergency savings, one little crisis can really send someone over the edge financially. The other thing is we know that it's critical for building wealth. And most of the things that hopes and dreams that people have, like a college education or even, a special vacation, home ownership, a new car, all those things come with a price tag. And the way to get to those is through saving. So those are the two things I would say: building wealth and preparing for times of financial crisis.
Lindsay, the America Saves program and America Saves Week is an important part of sort of getting people started in this. Why is it important for people to get started saving?
I mean, I think those are all great statements. I love the idea of financial security and knowing that if there was an unexpected expense that came about, you were able to take care of that without having to go farther into debt. A lot of families do live, quote unquote, on the edge of a financial crisis, whether that's a car repair or a home repair, an unexpected expense. So if you are saving regularly and you have things like an emergency fund and you do not have debt, you're able to kind of withstand some of those financial shocks that we know always happen, will always be there, and continue to happen throughout our life cycle. So I think security is just a great way to kind of start things off with being more financially secure and knowing that you kind of have this flexibility if things were to happen.
Lauren, I think some of the panelists have referred to this a little bit, but what are the consequences of not saving? I mean, where can we really get ourselves in trouble?
Yeah, I mean, I think the panel has kind of implicitly identified some of the big consequences. The main one being that when you don't have a kind of cushion, if something bad happens, you are really going to feel that in terms of your lifestyle, in terms of your stress levels. et cetera, when you have a kind of unintended expense. I think there's also a kind of another dimension to this that the panel hasn't mentioned yet, and that's the the benefits of saving, and then on the other side of the coin, the consequences of not saving that can have on the next generation. So just saving, if you as a parent can sort of model that behavior for your child, then there can really be a positive impact that can trickle down generations. And the consequences of not doing it means that your child isn't going to see you engaged in that behavior, and it's going to be even more difficult for them to do it when the time comes for them to start making financial decisions on their own.
That's a great point. Hey, Bryce, I think you're with us. Do you have other thoughts on the benefits of savings or why saving is important?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Yeah, I think, a lot of good things have been said, and one of the things is relationships are very important. And it just gives you flexibility when you have savings. And if you don't, then a lot of stress can enter in. You're on each other for every little expense, and it really can destroy relationships, marriages, a lot of conflict. And so having savings gives that buffer and flexibility to have kind of that peace of mind.
Great. Thanks, Bryce. Hey, Barb, has the Twitter chat sort of caught up with us yet? What are people saying online about the benefits of saving?
Well, they're pretty much mirroring the same things that we've been talking about here on the live chat. People are talking about the fact that if you have savings, you don't have to use credit. Savings gives you options in life, options to move, to change jobs, to start a business, to retire at a certain point in time. Somebody mentioned they're able to go out for lunch and just have some fun times in their life and not have to worry about the finances related to that. People talked about accumulating assets for their future, and also decrease stress, just not living on the financial edge and having no money to back you up in case things happen. Because as you all mentioned, things happen in life, and people, if they don't have any savings, are often relegated to either borrowing money from friends or using some type of credit.
Thanks a lot, Barb. And by the way, you can join this conversation on Twitter. Just use the hashtag eXASchat. And you can also be entered to win some gift cards that we're giving away, with some $25 gift cards that we'll be drawing for. If you participate in our conversation, all you have to do is mention @MoneyExtension in one of your tweets. That's @MoneyExtension @MoneyExtension, and share your thoughts on the benefits of saving money. Laura, or anybody who wants to chime in, because I would be really interested in the answer to this. I don't know who has the answer, but where can people get the highest interest rates on their savings?
The answer is it depends, and in your local area, or just the best recommendation is to shop around and compare interest rates on different savings products. I've had pretty good luck at my local credit union here where I live. And one place that you can look at kind of compare rates is on bankrate.com. So those would probably be my tips for a starting point to finding the best interest rates. With one other little tip might be to look at different types of savings vehicles, because it kind of depends on how long is it your emergency savings and you need it really liquid, really easy to get out, or is it something that you can commit to a little bit longer term savings, like putting it in some kind of an investment account or even a longer term CD.
Lauren, any other thoughts on that? Maybe we could talk a little bit about this kind of idea of easy access, short-term and long-term, and if people don't understand the difference.
Sure. So one major consideration when you're trying to decide what type of an account to use to save money is your time horizon for your savings. So if the savings that you are really interested in accruing now are sort of short-term savings, things that you think you might want to, money that you want to have access to either for an emergency or saving for some kind of goal that you expect to achieve in the next year or so, year to 2 years, then you're going to want to choose an account that is what we call very liquid. It means that it's always possible to access your money. There'll be no financial penalty associated with withdrawing your money. If, on the other hand, you're saving for something in the medium to long term, so a long-term savings example would, for most people, is a retirement savings account. Medium-term savings would be a goal that you expect to achieve in 3 to 10 years. So maybe this would be, tuition for a child or something like that. In those types of situations, you should look for an account that is slightly less liquid. It means that your money is going to be locked in, but the thing you sort of buy yourself with locking your money in is that you're going to have access to a higher rate of return, to a higher interest rate on those savings. So in the short-term savings situation where you want to always have access to your money, but your best option is going to be some kind of savings account, either through your local bank or credit union, as Laura was mentioning. It's also worthwhile to check online banks. Online banks right now are offering slightly higher interest rates on short-term savings accounts. And so, as Laura mentioned, bankrate.com is a great place you can go compare interest rates on short-term savings. The long-term really long-term savings, for your retirement, you're going to want to look at a savings account that offers you some kind of tax break. So this is going to be a 401k if your employer offers one, or an IRA or a Roth IRA if your employer doesn't. And then for those medium-term savings, you're going to want to think about a potential savings instrument that might lock you in a bit, but is going to offer you a slightly higher interest rate. So one good option in that case is a certificate of deposit. It's called a CD. Typically, you'll get a slightly higher interest rate than you would on a traditional savings account. But the trade-off is that you're going to sort of have to lock your money away for some predetermined amount of time. So let's say 6 months, it could be anywhere from 3 months to a few years. If you need the money in the interim while your money's locked away, you're going to have to pay a financial penalty in order to get it out. So even though you're going to get a higher interest rate on those types of accounts, you have to live with the fact that you won't have access to the money.
Lindsay, there's a lot there. Thank you, Lauren. I didn't mean that there was too much. I think it was a lot, but sometimes, so if we go and try and figure this out, where are there places where we can go and sort of maybe look at study this further to kind of decide where our money should go?
Yeah, I think it's always important to do your research. And at americasaves.org, we have kind of what to look for in a good savings account. Obviously, as both Lauren and Laura mentioned, you got to look for the needs that you specifically are looking for, or wants that you're looking for in these types of accounts. But I know americasaves.org, we have kind of a checklist of what to look for that's really useful. And I'm sure the panel can suggest other places that are, non-commercial, unbiased places to help you make the decision that's right for you and your family's needs.
Yeah, and Bryce, most of us, I guess, would say to start with cooperative extension.
Yeah, that's always a good place to start. You definitely want to go to eXtension. They have a lot of great stuff, as well as America Saves. I personally, what I do is go online, and I have an online high yield savings or money market account that gets me 1% currently. You get into CDs, and even up at 4 and 5 year CDs, they're only at about 1.7, 1.65. I don't like to lock my money in, and so that's never an option for me, but some people might. So I either do the high yield savings or money market account online, or kind of a credit union. You compare across and see what's best, and that's where I put my short-term savings.
Great. Thanks, Bryce. What are people sharing online, Barb, in terms of places to get the highest interest rates on their savings?
Well, I'm seeing a mix of questions. We still got some former questions, and then we've got that question as well. People are talking about the fact that if you save, your future self will thank you. I think Sasha Grabenstetter said that. Lorna Saboe-Wounded said that it's important to have savings as a buffer for the unexpected. And then as far as the best interest rates, people are recommending shopping around, following the rule of three, checking out 3 different institutions, looking for annual percentage yields and comparing them among the different accounts that are offered. Looking at online banks and credit unions. And then I think Katie Mielitz made a really good comment that as far as the unexpected, it's not a question of if, but when these things are going to happen that will require some emergency cash.
Great. Thanks, Barb. And we might be running a little bit ahead of our Twitter chat, but we'll try and hang in there and remind our viewers that you can contribute to that Twitter chat by going online and using the hashtag eXASchat. And don't forget to mention @moneyextension. Erica, let's talk about our next question here about people overcoming obstacles to savings. I am notorious for my lack of willpower. So what kinds of things keep people from actually following through on their goal to save?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that keep people as obstacles is sometimes our goals and our dreams are so big. So we reach for the stars and thinking that we have to do the biggest momentous thing to be able to accomplish. And, a lot of times, unfortunately, the first of the year, right? We just, a lot of people set New Year's resolutions. And honestly, I think sometimes when we set our goals too big or we have too lofty expectations, we tend to fail. And so, my biggest recommendation of trying to overcome that is really setting small, achievable goals and then building on those goals over time. So maybe it's really looking at how can you save a very small amount per week. And then once you've accomplished that, go on to the next week and then accomplish that. And so you have these little itemized goals that you can build up to that hopefully over time you can really develop that pattern. A lot of just creating a savings mentality is really helpful. I know Barb O'Neill in the past have done savings challenges and really kind of encourage that. I know we've talked about that on previous Twitter chats as well. And those are some just great ways to really start that process in an achievable manner so that you can start to see some momentum, see some progress, and being able to actually start to accomplish small goals that hopefully will lead up to larger goals. So I think sometimes breaking it down, we say how fast can you eat an elephant? You got to break it into chunks. And so, just kind of think about savings from that particular perspective and bring it down to something that's going to be achievable for you.
Laura, when we talk about people sort of living, paycheck to paycheck, how do you get started saving in that situation where it seems like, you're spending, at the end of the month, there's nothing left?
I think the first step is to take a good look at expenses and income. And so look at all the expenses and all the income. But even it's a good idea to maybe track what we call phantom spending or out-of-pocket spending for a while to see make sure you don't have any spending leaks. And then when you've written down all of your expenses and all of your income, it's a good opportunity to take a good look at exactly where your money's going so that you can maybe look for extra ways to save money, and then look for ways to cut expenses. The biggest probably category of flexible expenses for most households is food. Your mortgage is set, car insurance usually, car payments, so many things you really don't have a lot of control over changing those. But food is a pretty big ticket item. So saving money at the grocery store, giving up maybe stops at the coffee shop, some expendable things there, looking at brown bagging lunch instead of going out. So that's one place where consumers can usually find some money to save. We're coming up on another really good one though soon, tax season. That refund is a great opportunity to save as well.
So Lauren, if we carve out some of that, those savings, using coupons or reducing our coffee consumption or whatever, how do you have recommendations of how we can actually make sure that gets saved and doesn't just end up getting spent on something else?
Yeah, I think the best way to make sure the money gets saved is to save first. So by sort of, I mean, it's in some ways it's kind of circular, but if you sort of set aside your savings at the start of the month into a separate account where your money is sort of distinct, your savings money is distinct from your spending money, it's much easier to sort of cognitively keep that money separate and keep it secured in your savings account. Another great thing to do is have this happen automatically. So, most employers, if you get direct deposit, will allow you to split your paycheck into 2 separate accounts. So doing this such that you don't ever have your savings money in hand, it really reduces the temptation to spend if you can sort of have the money automatically be directed into your savings account.
Lindsay, are there other obstacles that you've run into that keep people from saving?
Yeah, and I think another great way to think about saving when you feel like you just don't know where to find the extra money is to remember that paying down those high interest debts, that can be considered a form of saving, because you're saving money essentially on those fees and costs that are coming from those high interest credit cards or high interest loans. So sometimes that's an easier way for people to look at saving. And I think as America Saves, we think that that's a great way to approach saving as well, because you're saving your money at the end of the day because you're not paying some of those fees that can be ridiculous, And then of course, just as everybody kind of mentioned on the call, just do it, think small, pay yourself first. I know that sounds really silly, but it's really the best way to do it, and it makes sense once you start seeing those things accumulate after you make that automatic deposit into your savings account from your paycheck every paycheck or week or month, and you start seeing those accounts rise. You really will take pride in that statement of paying yourself first. So we encourage that too. But, we understand that people may not have the money or feel like they don't have the money, but you can always find ways. And one great example is paying down those high interest debts. And I think that's a good strategy that some people use when they just feel like, I don't have $5. You may be paying $13 because you have a rotating balance on your credit card,
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know where Twitter is on this, but I think we're rolling pretty fast, and Twitter might have a hard time catching up. But
they're rolling along with you. So some of the things that they've been talking about is Scott Madison was talking about looking for the leaks in your spending and knowing the difference between wants and needs. America Saves posted a link to their research that indicates that planners are more successful. So people who have a savings plan are going to have more money accumulated. People talked about increasing income, decreasing expenses, or doing a little bit of both. Pam Atkinson talked about making savings a family game. So there's a little gamification along with the savings, which can make it fun for a family. And Sasha mentioned that saving just a penny a day, and there actually is a penny saving challenge that's out there where you increase your savings by a penny a day, and you end up somewhere around $660 at the end of the year. So all these are pretty powerful strategies.
Great. Thanks, Barb. And thanks to everybody who's contributing on Twitter. A reminder to our viewers that you can join the conversation with the hashtag eXASchat. Also, request to our viewers, if you're enjoying this panel discussion, go ahead and share it with your contacts. We'd love to have more viewers join us on this YouTube live panel. So, Bryce, we kind of got to some of this in the last question. But let's talk about some more saving strategies when money is tight. I guess I kind of led into that with, living paycheck to paycheck. But do you have other suggestions or strategies that we could use when money's tight and we're trying to save?
Sure. It has been mentioned that starting small and having just $10 to $15 a month automatically transferred into a new savings account that's specific for your savings goal from your checking. But there's a couple other apps that we could download and makes it easy. For example, Digit or Acorns is they're two different apps, and they kind of round your dollars up. So if you go and buy something and it was $3.43, then it's going to take 57 cents. It's going to round it up to $5 and stick that over into savings. And so as you spend, your change, just like a change jar, kind of goes into this other account that then you can choose, it's actually invested, and you can choose, low risk, mid risk, high risk, and it can start growing. And you can check that out. And at any time you want it back, you can bring it back to your account. So if people want it automatic and not have to think about it, signing up for something like that is similar to setting up an automatic withdrawal from checking into savings. So those are apps that I've used, and it adds up pretty quickly, and you don't really miss it. And so that's the nice thing.
Anyone else have suggestions on saving strategies when money is tight? Lindsay, you opened your microphone, so go for it.
Yeah, no, I just was going to repeat. I think Laura hit on it, but tax time is always a great time to talk about saving and get those emergency funds build up. And you can do that through Form 8888 right there at the tax site when you're doing your taxes. And you can pull the refund up into 4 different accounts, which I don't think people are quite aware that you have that many options. So you can still treat yourself and put some of that refund into a checking account and plan on spending it. But it's a great time to put that $500 away for that set of tires that you need, or a refrigerator repair, etc. So don't forget about tax time. That's an excellent strategy. There's also some incentivized tax time opportunities, which America Saves has, which is called Save Your Refund, where if you do save at least $50 of your refund, you're entered in to win some cash prizes. So again, just kind of making it fun and building your savings as quick. That's a great way to build them up really quickly, because a lot of people do receive a decent refund throughout this tax season.
I also wanted to just follow up on Bryce's mention of some interesting technological stuff that can help save. I think for people who are having trouble budgeting and having trouble with the sort of phantom spending, like where did all those kind of little purchases go? I personally find using an online aggregator app to be really effective tool in helping me with my budget. So I personally use Mint, but there are many out there. If you just search online budgeting app, you'll get a list of them. And essentially what these tools help you do is to aggregate the transactions from all your different accounts and credit cards into one place. It allows you to then make budgets within different categories and track exactly how much you're spending on each little category. So after I started, I kind of, this very typical story, but it really allowed me to become aware of how much I was spending on coffee out. And it prompted me, just sort of seeing those dollars add up, really prompted me to go out and buy a tea kettle for my office so that I could make coffee right here in my office. So, I found using that method where everything was kind of aggregated in one place really helped me get a very clear picture of my spending and allowed me to sort of make changes based on accurate information.
I use Mint as well, and one of the things it helps me do is avoid some of the hidden costs that Lindsay sort of referred to, which is make sure I don't pay something late. Because it reminds me when stuff is due. So that it has reduced those late fees for me. Laura or Erica, anything else to add to this idea of strategies for when money's tight?
I think there are a couple of more things that we should maybe mention here that we've kind of alluded to but haven't really quite hit on. One is kind of relates to that small steps idea. So, for example, if someone wanted to had a goal, a savings goal to pay down maybe some revolving debt, some credit card debt, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to pay down debt, but without a specific plan, it's really difficult to do. So I would say actually finding out what steps you need to take, or having a plan, a specific strategy in place to work towards your goal. And then the other thing is, we tend to think that it's just dollars and cents in the bottom line, but we know in money management there's so much more. And motivation is a huge thing, and this is where America Saves comes into play in a big way, because so many of the things that we can do through America Saves kind of really hit on that motivation component. So really visualizing and coming up with what your savings goal is. That's really the motivation to keep saving, even when you don't feel like saving. So coming up with that goal and then write it down, because we know if you write it down, make that commitment, you're more likely to attain that goal. And I would reference here too the small steps to health and wealth that Barbara Dill has worked on as a great resource for looking at all of those kind of those non-dollar and cents things, those behavior change things that we all tend to struggle with when we're doing something like setting a savings or other personal life goals.
Thanks, Laura. Go ahead, Erica.
Well, the last thing I think I would just say is that I think sometimes we think we have to reinvent ourselves in order to start saving. And a lot of it, I believe Laura talked a little bit about this, was kind of tracking and figuring out where your money's going from. And you talked about mint.com and using apps. But I think sometimes just being aware and maybe just one small change. But a lot of times that one small change can add up over time. And so, sometimes it's not completely changing everything that you do, but maybe it's one little thing that maybe you're spending your money on, like Lauren talked about, could just be changed a little bit. So it's not that you're having to get rid of it completely, but maybe doing things differently. And I think sometimes if we frame it from that perspective, it feels a little bit more achievable than completely changing who we are.
Erica, I think that was a great comment. I think that's something that a lot of people forget, that if they just kind of can visualize where their money is going by using a great thing like app. I'm a Mint user. I love it. I check it probably way too much, but it's just so exciting to see I have this much money and, I know where my money's going. So, that's a great point, that it's not necessarily about the money. It's also about being really aware of your finances and making that just check in we like to say once a year during America Saves Week, but I obviously do it all the time and just find out where your money is going.
Barb, how's the Twitter conversation going on this subject of strategies for saving when money's tight?
Well, the conversation is pretty active, and for that particular question, they talked primarily about tracking spending. Somebody mentioned individual development accounts, IDA programs, if people qualify by income for a match savings program. We had Money in My 30s talking about discipline, patience, and confidence. And then we also had folks answering the question about the attributes of people who are good savers. And we did have a couple people admit to a Starbucks addiction. And then as far as the attributes, we heard several people talk about conscientiousness. The Military Families Learning Network Personal Finance Group mentioned that. Air Force Federal Credit Union said that good savers are patient, and they also live a modest lifestyle. So a lot of agreement with what the live session is saying.
Anybody on the panel have more to add to that question that started on Twitter about attributes of people who are good at saving money? I think Erica and Lindsay, you guys kind of referred to this too. It's like anybody can save money, but are there certain things maybe that you should be paying attention to in terms of your habits to make sure that you follow through on it?
I know we touched on it, but making a plan. America Saves has the pledge, which is the simplest of savings plan, but it's writing it down and saying, I plan to save $50 a paycheck for a vacation or whatever the case may be. So I think that that's a great attribute of savers. And we recently surveyed over 1,000 of our savers, what we call committed savers. And these are people who have taken the pledge. They have interacted with us by opening our motivational messages. So thank you, Laura, for plugging those. And they have told us that since essentially making that plan by taking the pledge, they are 57% somewhat successful to reaching their savings goals. And then 57% of those individuals are saying that they're they've met their savings goals. So just writing it down, I think, is a wonderful attribute of a good saver, and checking in on that goal as frequently as you can.
Yeah, I think this idea that there are certain, people who can save, or certain characteristics. I think there are certain behaviors that people exhibit who save, and anyone can exhibit those behaviors. I think a big key of it is kind of thinking deeply about yourself and your own personal challenges when you try and save, and think about the types of things that could help you. So, some people might be highly motivated by, for example, receiving America Saves great motivational messages. Other people might be more motivated by turning savings into a social exercise. So committing among friends or family members to a savings goal and having to come back and report to them, introducing this sense of accountability. Then there are other people who might just be better served by sort of really being careful and deliberate about this automatic savings. So, making the money go directly into your savings account and not even letting yourself touch it. So I think there is kind of a measure of self-awareness and self-knowledge, and thinking deeply about what personally is your biggest challenge, and then which tools would serve you best.
Great, thanks, Lauren. Bryce, how do you save money, and what's working for you?
Well, one thing that helps me and others that I've met with is this idea of motivation. And so what is the goal or the big yes that helps us win so that we can say no to the less important immediate wants, some of that impulse buying. And so if we can find what motivates us and then make it easy, then that works. And so I use mint.com, and that's easy for me. I see where I'm spending money incorrectly according to my goals and values and plan, and I make those tweaks. I pay myself first to have automatically that money going into a savings account so I don't have to worry about it anymore, and I live on what's left. And so it's easy, and then it's also exciting. It should be fun. I see the money growing in my savings, and that's more exciting than maybe looking good to my friends having the new gadget or whatever. And so whatever motivates you to win financially, I think is beneficial. But for me, it's just making that decision, making it automatic, and then having these goals of going on a vacation with my family or paying cash for the car or whatever it is. And then when I want to go spend money with that impulse buying, I can more easily say, no, that's not as important as this other goal I have.
So one other thing kind of to build off of that, that I think is also important too, is to anticipate some of the bigger expenses you're going to have. So I think about the fact that I've got 2 kids. My kids are starting to be involved in different things, and those things cost money, and they cost a significant amount of money throughout the year. And so any things that you can do to start to anticipate what you're going to have, it just helps you to start to set priorities. So I think part of it is making it automatic and having that opportunity and having that behavior that you're developing. But then also I think part of it is you're understanding what are potential expenses that are going to be coming up, because you could do the best job at setting aside small amounts of money over time, but if you don't anticipate what the rest of those expenses are going to be, you can very easily dive into whatever you've actually saved, which is good, but you also want to keep moving forward. So I think it's got to be that balancing act. And so I think part of it too is really trying to get a handle on throughout the year, are there things that you are spending money on? Maybe it's the holidays, maybe it's a birthday season. In our family, we have a ridiculous amount of birthdays in April. And so that's something that we have to plan for. So I think some of those things, those expected expenses that sometimes pop up are things that we need to also consider as well, that are maybe more flexible throughout the year.
Lauren or Lindsay, or you want to jump in on this idea of how do you save money? What strategies are working for you? Are there strategies that we haven't mentioned?
No, I think those are great. I mean, it's kind of also what we've been talking about, like self-reflection and knowing what you're spending. Me, for example, I'm in the season of weddings and baby showers all the dang time. So I realized I would love to celebrate my friends and family and their milestones, but it was becoming a cost. So I actually opened up an online savings account and just have every paycheck A nominal amount goes in there, and I call it my money fund. And when a wedding or baby shower comes up, I use those funds to purchase the gifts or travel to that event. So I think just kind of knowing where your money is going is so important, and don't deprive yourself. I want to be a part of these milestones with my friends and family, but I know it's going to be a cost, so I have to prepare myself for that.
Right.
I think one other thing is don't be afraid to say no. If you feel pressured to spend money on something, maybe something like going out to lunch with colleagues, or Lindsay was just mentioning, bridal showers and those types of things. Like if there's a lot of social pressure to spend money on things that may not necessarily conform with your values and your savings goals. And, it may sound trite, but it is okay to say no to those things if they are derailing your personal goals, because at the end of the day, it's going to be you have to answer to, not your sort of friends or colleagues or whomever.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Lauren. Barb, what is Twitter saying about how they're saving money and strategies?
Okay, well, they've been answering that question and also the one after it, which talks about whether you should put money into savings or put it toward debt. So I'll kind of give you a recap on both. People have been using the phrase pay yourself first. Somebody mentioned Military Families Learning Network. Personal finance team mentioned perhaps changing your W-4 form to free up some more cash that could be saved in lieu of maybe having a large refund that you have to wait for. America Saves talked about direct deposit or scheduled transfers. And of course, it's easy to do these things these days with phone apps that you can just lock in a transfer. And then as far as the question about paying debt or saving, as far as having a priority between the two, the consensus seems to be for many people to do both. Somebody made the point, the Air Force Federal Credit Union, that if you don't have any savings, then you have no buffer when the next thing happens, and then you're kind of increasing your debt balance again. So there was some consensus there. Pam Atkinson kind of argued the other view, is that the debt has a much higher interest rate than the rate that's earned on savings, and perhaps that should be prioritized. And then Clarify jumped in and they talked about finding a balance. So again, kind of talking about that do both strategy to clean up the debt that people have and also save at the same time.
Thanks, Barb. That question, our Twitter users on that question are sort of like my kids. Do you want either or? And the answer is both, right? So Laura, where do you fall on this idea of what's more important, an emergency fund or pay down your debt?
Well, this is a question that I hear pretty frequently when we do financial planning workshops. And yes, ideally both. Sometimes what we see are consumers who are in a paycheck to paycheck mode where they are just barely meeting expenses and making minimum payments on debt. And in that situation, we do like to examine the budget, look for any place we can squeeze out a little extra money, and look at some kind of debt repayment plan so that there's a little bit of wiggle room in the budget. I like to encourage consumers, if they're starting from zero in an emergency savings fund, it can seem overwhelming, because what most personal finance experts recommend is at least 2 months and as much as 6 months or more in emergency savings, enough to cover that many months of expenses. So that can just really seem overwhelming to people. So I like to think start small, maybe with the goal of $500 in an emergency fund. That way, if you need a tire or have a smaller bill, it won't force you immediately to go into more debt to pay for it. And then chip away at the debt with some kind of specific repayment plan. And powerpay.org is a great place to go to kind of play around with finding the best repayment plan for your situation.
Great, thanks, Laura. Anyone else want to chime in on this, the controversial question of emergency fund versus pay down debt? No?
I will.
Okay, go for it, Bryce. You're a brave soul.
I think that it's actually three things. It's important to get into the habit of saving and investing. And so even if you do a little, again, for example, you can use some different programs like betterment.com or homesteadfunds.com, where you could put $20 a month automatically invested into those accounts, and then it diversifies for you based on your risk tolerance. And so just starting small gets you in the habit, and then as you see it grow, you'll want to do more and more, and you'll miss that money in your other expenses less and less. And so starting with investing, starting with saving small, and if you have high interest debt, then you at least start with the small, and then you attack your debt. And this isn't about debt, but when you're attacking debt, you want to, instead of paying a little bit extra to everything, you kind of want to pay the minimum to everything, and then as much as you can to maybe the debt with the smallest balance, to kind of get that moving and paying off. And so I think it's all of them, and it really depends on your goal. If you have high interest debt, then you maybe want to do it really small and then focus on the debt. If you don't have much debt, it's maybe just a mortgage and a car payment, then you pay some extra to your car payment, and you're really focused because you don't have an emergency fund. So you focus on filling that up to get at least $1,000 to $2,000 maybe a month to start with, and then go back to attacking your debt. So it depends on your goals, but I think getting in the habit of paying extra towards your debt, saving a little and investing a little is important, and then switch the amount of extra money going to any one of those based on your current goals.
Great. Thanks, Bryce. Laura, I'm going to come back to you to ask about retirement. How much am I supposed to save for my retirement? Maybe that depends on how long I plan to live, which maybe is two different questions. But anyway, is there a guideline for folks on how much you should save for retirement?
Well, how long you think you might live does come into play. And there you can look for online calculators, life expectancy calculators, to kind of get an idea about that. One that I took recently said I'm going to live to be 103. So I'll need a lot more money than I would if I were just living to, my mid to late 70s, like we typically expect to. I don't know, maybe I need to take up some bad habits.
Those cost money, Laura, and then that will eat into your...
But we do look at life expectancy, and also what do you plan to do in retirement? Some people get hobby jobs after their retirement that generate income, but some people want to not work and maybe travel. So those are some things to look at, and also to estimate. So we want to estimate future expenses and current income and future income, just like we do for any other kind of financial goal. So the ballpark estimator is great to use. Social Security, you can go online at the Social Security website and look at how much your Social Security is going to be. So look at what your income is going to be, and then estimate the cost of your living expenses in the future, so that you'll see that you have enough money to meet those needs and to live the retirement lifestyle that you dream of.
Great. I'm going to just ask if anybody else on the panel wants to jump in on that, as we've got a few more questions to get through, and we want to make sure that we get to everything. But if anyone wants to jump in on the retirement, Lauren, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that, when you are making that decision about how much to save for retirement, it's always better to save earlier, because of the fact that we accrue compound interest. Saving $1 today is going to wind up, leave you with a lot more money at your retirement day than if you were to save the same dollar in 10 years, let's say. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you do have some flexibility in your budget, saving earlier is going to mean that you don't have to save as much in order to wind up with more income at the time you retire.
And then I was just going to add too, one of the things to think about too, as far as saving for retirement, definitely looking at what your employer offers. If they offer a match, that's a nice opportunity for you to get a dollar for dollar addition in your savings. So depending on what your employer match is, if that's something that's going to be available, that can increase the opportunity for you to have it. As well as, thinking about other types of saving strategies, thinking about Roth IRAs is a great opportunity to get those dollars tax-free at withdrawal, because it's an after-tax opportunity. So I think really looking at some of the opportunities that you may have available, that's a really good opportunity, and just kind of seeing some of the resources that you have at your disposal. But checking out what your employer offers can be a real helpful thing.
Thanks, Erica. Barb, what is Twitter saying about how much should we save for retirement?
Okay, well, the Air Force Federal Credit Union talked about the fact when people get older, you can kind of narrow down a little bit more on your goals and be a little bit more specific about your expenses. Pam Atkinson mentioned try to save as a teen or adult, kind of tying into what Erica just said about having time on your side. Some people mentioned particular savings vehicles like MyRA, individual retirement accounts or IRAs, employer plans. Clarify mentioned that if you hire an advisor, they should be acting in a fiduciary capacity, which of course means that they put the interests of their clients first. Somebody asked a question, and I don't know that it was ever answered in the Twitter feed, whether there's a ballpark of 25 times your annual expenses, if that should be the number that you save. And I guess my personal answer to that would be it really depends. Probably the best way to get a number for a person is to really do what many of the panelists were saying, look at your projected lifestyle, whether you're going to be working in retirement or not, if you're going to be living in a lower cost area. So do more of a personal analysis rather than just kind of rely on some kind of ballpark rule of thumb that may not be applicable for every person. They're actually moving on to talking about the teenagers and getting teens to save, and they're talking about maybe matching some of their children's savings and having teens pay for their next cell phone and to make sure that they save for it. So lots of different ideas there related to getting children to save.
Lindsay, do you want to jump in with, do you have any ideas for strategies for getting teenagers to save money?
Teenagers, I think that's a population that we don't necessarily work with other than the Young Workers Program. And I know with that big piece of that is they set them up with a bank account as soon as they're starting to receive a paycheck. So that hired with their job, which I think is awesome, because I did not do that with my first job. I got my paper check, I went to the bank, cashed it, and it was probably spent that afternoon. So that's something that we heavily push with youth specifically is if you are going to earn an income, which is awesome, you need to start saving at least, a small portion of that right away and making it something that's automatic so that you do not touch it.
Great. Anyone else things to add about strategies for teenagers to save money?
So I have a couple things. I have 5 kids and a couple of teenagers, and the youngest is 6. So I've thought about this actually a lot. And what I do that is helpful is we create personal goals for them of what they want to save for. And then depending on what that is, if it's a bike or something else, then we have some type of a match. But then we also show them an example of what compounding interest is, kind of like what Lorna was saying before, and how much it can grow over time. And if they just put a little bit away now, that by the time they retire, they could put hardly any away and be millionaires. And so that kind of excites my kids, at least. And then we try to get them in the habit. Even my 6-year-old, they do different jobs just because, but then there's other things they can do to earn money. And we put away, 3 little jars or whatever, or envelopes. 10% goes to charity, 40% is spent, and 50% is saved. And so they're saving for the goal, so they're motivated to put a half away, plus they get some type of a match, depending if it's something bigger than just a toy. Then they have 40% that they get to spend. And so they're getting in the habit of kind of keeping track of their money, budgeting, saving for a goal. And the older ones, the teenagers, are really wanting to starting to put money into a savings account that then goes into investments because they see how much it could be, and that's motivating to them. So I think getting them in the habit now is good, even at a younger age than teenagers.
Thanks, Bryce. I'm just impressed that you have 5 kids and you still manage to save. But I have 3, and it's been a struggle. Anyway, Erica, what's your number 1 savings tip or piece of advice you'd like to share with people?
I think I've said it already, but I think just starting small, think about something that's achievable. That's really kind of get the ball rolling and just, think about what that goal is and just try to build off that particular goal. So I would say start small.
Laura?
I think we've talked about so many different strategies and things today, from finding your motivation to making a specific plan, writing down goals, matching retirement. I think that we as consumers are all so unique with different situations, different personality, different motivations. And I think that motivation is a key thing in it, or if I could even say your savings mojo. So that would be my number one bottom line savings tip, is that everyone has to find their own savings mojo. But to do that, they can look at all the tips and tricks and strategies that we've talked about today and find the blend that works uniquely for them.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Barb, I'm going to just do a quick check on Twitter on the number one savings tips, because we have a couple more questions still to get to. What are people saying on Twitter about savings tips?
Scott Madison said, just do it. Katie Millets talked about starting small, pretty much what Erica was talking about before. And Air Force Federal Credit Union, going back to that question on teens, they had something creative called the Jet Space Club, which I guess fits in with the Air Force theme. And it's a program for their teens to get teens to save. Saboe-Wounded had said, set a goal and make a plan to save the goal. So kind of tying in with the America Saves theme.
Great. Thanks, Barb. Hey, Lauren, we've mentioned taxes a few times, and April 15th is looming. So why is tax time a good time to think about saving?
Well, it's easiest to save when you don't have to reduce your consumption in order to do so, when you don't have to change your budget. We all know how difficult it becomes once we get used to, spending a certain amount of money every week or month, and making the purchases we habitually make. It's really difficult to kind of save, to reduce, and make active decisions to reduce your spending in order to save. So tax time represents a really great time, because it's one of the few times in our lives where we're not going to be faced with having to reduce our budget in order to save some money. Another great time, just to sort of tack on, is if you happen to get a raise at work or start a new job, especially for young workers. These moments where you're having big kind of increases in your income, either temporarily through your tax refund or permanently, these are the really effective moments to sort of allocate money to savings, and these moments where you don't have to change your spending habits in order to do it. So I think that's one really great reason why tax time is a wonderful time to start saving.
Anything else from our panel on tax time being a great time to save? As I think Lauren's covered a lot of it. But jump in if you have anything else. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Well, to file their taxes, even if you don't feel like you may be getting a refund, and just know that there is a lot of money left on the table through the earned income tax credit, and it's just something that people should. You might be able to get an extra $200 if you feel like you haven't worked that much or didn't make that much. Just remind everybody that a lot of money is left on the table in that form of that credit.
Great. Well, I know, Lauren, earlier you covered pretty well the type of account that's best for long-term versus short-term savings. Was there anything else anyone had to add about that? What type of account is best for long-term versus short-term? We talked about CDs and regular savings accounts, lots of different things there. Give my panel a chance to jump in if they want to. No? All right. Barb, how about these last two questions on Twitter? How are people reacting to the tax time, a good time to save, and the long-term versus short-term account?
Okay, so people were talking about the fact that tax time kind of forces you to review your finances because you're getting all the documents in the mail from your financial institutions. Scott Madison recommended taking half of your refund and putting it into savings. And then several folks mentioned that there are people out there in the community that can help you. VITA programs, many of which are run by Cooperative Extension. And Katie Millets talked about asking for help. So that was kind of important. And then as far as the type of account, again, somebody mentioned that it really depends on your risk tolerance and your goals. So there's no one right answer for everyone, but I guess the best thing is to kind of get the best match to your the time frame for your goals and your risk tolerance to have volatility in the amount of your investment.
Well, thanks so much, Barb. Thanks to everybody who viewed this. I want to remind you that for a chance to win one of those $25 gift cards, just interact with us on Twitter. Make sure that you mention @MoneyExtension. And we'd love if you could let us know what you thought of this event. Tweet your evaluation, the 140-character feedback. And again, mention @MoneyExtension in that, and you'll be entered to win one of those gift cards. Great conversation, everybody. I want to thank you so much. Dr. Barb O'Neill from Rutgers University, Dr. Laura Hendrix from the University of Arkansas, Lindsay Ferguson from the America Saves program, Dr. Bryce Jorgensen from New Mexico State University, Dr. Erica Tobe from Michigan State University, and Dr. Lauren Jones from The Ohio State University. Great job, everybody. And thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you the next time we get our panel together to talk more about your financial matters. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.